I challenged myself to beat Final Fantasy X with only Tidus. Tidus? In Final Fantasy X, Tidus is the king of speed control and can dish out a ton of physical damage. But the gameplay in Final Fantasy X generally relies on switching party members in and out so they can cover each other's respective weaknesses. The full set of rules is in the description, but briefly, Tidus is the only party member who can take meaningful action. All the other party members must escape in random battles or choose defend or switch weapons or do something else that doesn't really do much in boss battles. With one exception, but I'll talk about that when we get there. Also, Tidus is the only party member that can use the sphere grid, and he may not deviate from the abilities that are meant for him. This will ensure that it's Tidus doing all of the damage and not just a Tidus-skinned Lulu double casting Flare, because that's not really Tidus. We start by naming our protagonist, and of course we name him Alone. No relation to the Final Fantasy VIII character, though. The game starts with a fight with a bunch of sin scales. Of course, the first thing I do is kill off Auron, so we're actually doing this battle solo. But in the next battle, Auron is forcibly revived and forced to use his overdrive. Can't really help that. And of course, the rest of this battle is unlosable. This guy only casts a Demi, which does a quarter of your max HP, so can never actually kill you by itself. And I actually thought this section was unlosable, and I was wrong, because in the next section, one of the sin scales takes me out. And because I forgot to save at the very first save point of the game, that is a full reset. So I say a big whoops and pledge to save my game frequently in the rest of the run. On this reset though, I'm reminded that there are no skippable cutscenes in this game. I'm playing on the HD remaster. Like, remasters should have skippable cutscenes, come on. And this time I remember to save and I make it through the sin scales with no issue. I should also mention that during the sin spawn fight, I learned the loner overdrive ability. My ally should die quite quickly in every single battle, so this is going to be the fastest and most reliable way to refill my overdrive gauge, which is going to be a huge source of damage. Then we hang out with this cute burb and fight Giosgano. And this battle actually is an auto win. And after discovering fire for the very first time, we meet Rikku. And as is tradition in these types of runs, whenever I meet a new friend, I kill them. But now we have access to the sphere grid, so I make sure to learn the cheer skill. This will be one of the most important skills in the run. It increases Tidus's attack and defense. This will allow him to both do more damage with each hit and survive physical skills that he wouldn't have survived otherwise. More on that later. Because now we fight the boss Tross, which means I'm gonna have to step my Octo up. Normally, this battle teaches you about trigger commands. Tidus and Rikku can perform a pincer attack, which prevents this boss from escaping. But with Rikku dead, we're stuck with standard tactics. So when the boss goes away, I defend so that its return attack can't hit me for huge damage. Honestly, not too difficult. And then Tidus becomes this game's first victim of victim blaming. No one actually believes that he's from Zanarkand, but then whatever, Sin takes him away and he has to go to Besaid. But not before our new friend Waka pushes us off a cliff. Rude. But we survive that attack on our lives. Then we head into Besaid Temple where we grab the Destruction Sphere treasure, which we won't be using at all in this run because it's a weapon for Yuna, and Yuna gets her first Aeon, which I call Burb. Then we're forced into one of many tutorials where we learn to use our character's abilities. This time it's Lulu's turn and she's forced to use a Thunder against this water flan. Then we recruit Kamari, who also moonlights as the 5th member of the Blue Man group, and we head to the boat. But it's not our boat, it's somebody else's boat, which is the best kind of boat. Which leads us to the fight with Sin's fin, which represents the only exception to only using Tidus that we have in this run. Sin's fin is a distant enemy, and that means that the only things that can hit it are magical abilities and Waka's ball. That's right, Waka only has one ball. He's the Lance Armstrong of Final Fantasy X. And with their help, we're able to take down the fin, and we go underwater to fight Sin Spawn. But unfortunately, I underestimate the damage this boss can do, and I end up taking a death. But while I did save on the boat, I feel like I don't have quite enough stats to beat this guy. But more importantly, I decide to see if maybe Tidus is going to be able to beat this guy if he just has one magical skill. And that skill is Lancet, which is just 4 sphere spots away. So I grind for a couple hours until Tidus is able to learn Lancet, and we head back to the Sin Scale fight, where Tidus's Lancet does massive damage. Yeah, that's not gonna work. But if you liked hearing me say massive damage, then you should watch the RPG Challenge Runs channel, which I will link in the description-do. He does a ton of challenge runs, including Pokemon, Persona, and Final Fantasy movie, of course. Go check him out. However, I take the L on this one, and we go back and do the battle as usual using our allies. But don't worry, you will see me suffer plenty in this run. By the way, I saved on the ship, so I still have Lancet learned, but I will not be using it in this run. I still feel like that goes against the spirit of the Tidus only challenge. Anyway, I take another death on the Sin Spawn Echuiles fight, whoever you say that one. But on my third try, I finally shape up, heal at appropriate times, and take him down. Unfortunately, though, our battle with Sin agitates him, causing him to destroy Kilika Village. So Yuna collects all of their Dragon Balls with her Dancey Dance, and we head on to Kilika Forest. The next boss in this run is King Ochu, and he is technically an optional boss, but he does drop some nice stuff. His common drop is MP Spheres, which would allow me to get more MP. But more importantly, his rare drop is an HP Sphere, or 2 if you overkill him. Those would make me a lot more bulky and really help with some of the harder bosses in the game, which of course means that I skip him entirely, which I'm sure will not come back to bite me in the butt later. And the next boss fight is against Sin Spawn Genois. This boss has 3 components, its 2 tentacles and its main form. Taking out the tentacles early is pretty crucial, as those can do a lot of damage to Tidus. But ultimately, this boss goes down pretty quickly. I grab another useless Destruction Sphere treasure and we get back on the boat. But not before we recruit our next Aeon, whom I named Dog. And I'm proud to say that I learned Eject Shot on my first try. I found this challenge so tough when I was a kid, but now it seems pretty easy. And speaking of the Eject Shot and Blitzball, the next destination is the city of Luca, and we meet yet another one of my Final Fantasy husbands, Seymour. Feed me, Seymour, feed me now. I purchased the Stunning Steel from Owaka here because that will allow me to slow enemies before I actually get the slow spell. And Yuna now gets kidnapped, which means we gotta rescue her from robots, but not before one of those robots kills me. But fortunately, I saved pretty close to this point, so I head on to the boss robot, the Obliterator. And unfortunately, this guy's powerful Blitzball rush technique takes me out. Reasons I'll never buy a Roomba? This. Tidus's base HP just isn't enough to deal with his physical onslaught. I mean, I tried this battle twice. It was impossible. But fortunately, the robots right outside of this battle are perfect for grinding. Not only do they provide great AP, but they also drop high potions and occasionally X potions. Those will come in very handy as we progress through the game. I grind for about 2 hours, but the grind ends when I hit the haste spell. This ability will be used in just about every battle for the rest of this run. The agility stat along with the haste status influence the number of turns that you get, which you can see in the upper right corner of the screen of Final Fantasy X's battle system. And I do like the fact that they put that indicator up in the top right because I like that transparency. You can easily defend or heal right before your enemy's attack, which makes strategizing and planning a lot easier. And with this newfound agility, I'm able to take out the Obliterator rather quickly. Turns out I actually didn't need any more defense or HP to make this work. And next up comes one of the most controversial parts of Final Fantasy X, Blitzball. Some people hate it, but I love it. As a kid, I literally spent days grinding Blitzball League and tournament prizes, not the least of which is one of the components of Wakka's ultimate weapon. But this time, I'll only be playing this mandatory match, which I need to win. The strength sphere here is crucial to doing enough damage in this run to kill multiple bosses. And in the first half, I managed to score a goal with Tidus, although the other team also scores. So I head into the second half tied 1-1. Fortunately though, in the second half, I'm able to use the Eject Shot. This is one of the most powerful Blitzball techniques in the game. It can completely negate 2 defenders that you're in a scrimmage with. Unfortunately though, it only gets rid of the bottom 2 defenders in terms of stats. And I fall victim to that shortcoming in this game, because Balgurda, who has a tremendous block stat, is left over after I get rid of the other 2 defenders. And her block takes Tidus' shot low enough that it misses. When Wakka recovers, I get the ball to him with just 40 seconds left on the clock. He takes Balgurda's tackle, his shot is blocked for 1 point by Abyss, and he meets the goal with just 10 shot left. The goalie has 8 catch, and RNG G is in my favor and it goes in, so all I have to do is prevent the Luca goers from getting another shot for 40 seconds. Abus takes one final Hail Mary shot, but Jasu blocks it and it isn't enough. I've won the Blitzball game, I take my Strength Sphere, and I immediately put it into Tidus' Sphere Grid. Well, after I kill some very weak fish. Then Seymour uses his mommy to show us why he's daddy, and we move on. And in case you're wondering, I will not be playing Blitzball for the rest of this game because that also seems like it's against the spirit of the challenge. Next, Yuna teaches Tidus to whistle, and we see what I think is one of the most heartwarming scenes in all of Final Fantasy. The laughing scene between Tidus and Yuna, yes, is kind of cringy, but it's supposed to be cringy. Yuna on her pilgrimage is heading towards death, and Tidus doesn't know it, so she forces herself to laugh. She forces herself to smile, not for herself, but for everyone else that she's with. If she shows them that she's led a full and happy life, they're going to be more at peace with her eventual death when she performs the final summoning. Or at least that's what she thinks. If you were able to be more genuine than Yuna at age 17, congratulations to you, but I was a mess. I couldn't manage my own feelings, let alone somebody else's. Anyway, let's crack on. I do a bit of grinding on the Mi'ihen High Road, mostly so I can find a slot to place the Strength Sphere in. At this point, I also have the Flee ability on Tidus, meaning running away is never an issue if an encounter is too strong for me. And I should also mention that while on the Mi'ihen High Road, I got a fire attack weapon. And with that done, we head on to the Chocobo Eater. We managed to get the Chocobo Eater slowed with our Stunning Steel. Honestly, it's amazing to me that they allowed enemies to be slowed in this game. It's such an overpowered status that really allows Tidus to dominate. And dominate he does. Because after 5 cheers, his overdrive is enough to knock down the Chocobo Eater, and one physical attack with his flame weapon is enough to knock it back. Meaning I eventually knock this bird hater off the cliff and into oblivion. We proceed through the Mi'ihen High Road and to Mushroom Rock Road, where we fight our next Sin Spawn. And unfortunately, he's a little bit of a roadblock. And that's mainly because of his Venom attack. Normally in this battle, the boss's face wiggles around a little bit and Wakka's like, I can hit it! But again, Tidus has no way to hit distant targets, so he has to take every single Venom hit. And Venom does 3 things. First, it causes damage. A lot of damage. Second, it causes the poison status, which does 1/4 of your health every turn. And third, it dispels the haste status. That's a huge problem, and results in me dying. So it's time to grind a little bit more. And I grind until my HP is over 1300. That seems to be the breakpoint for this boss. And fortunately, I have a bunch of high potions for when I did a grind in Luca from the robots. So with some persistence, this Sin Spawn squeeze away. But not for long, because he comes back to fight Yuna, Auron, and Seymour. Fortunately, this battle is basically meant to be carried by Seymour alone, and he quickly dispatches this fiend. But unfortunately, Lumpy Space Princess, because that's basically what Sin is, takes out this operation. Which is a good segue to just talk a little bit about how this game addresses death. The plot is kind of a complicated example of the trolley problem. And just to unpack that problem a little bit, you basically have a train and you have 2 tracks. There are 5 people on one of the trolley's possible tracks, and there's just 1 person on the other. But the train is already on the path that leads it to kill the 5. So as a bystander, do you redirect the train so it only kills 1 person? Or do you leave it alone and let those 5 people die? Well, in Spira, Sin is the train. Sin will kill everybody in its wake, but you have an option. You can basically push a summoner in front of Sin to save everybody else. But only temporarily, that's the calm. And Spira, throughout its entire history, has chosen this utilitarian path to sacrifice summoners so that everyone else might live. Granted, the summoners have some agency in this. They know what they're getting into when they start their pilgrimage. But scenes like this, and the one where Kilika gets destroyed, just add a ton of stakes to this game. And the utilitarian answer would be clear if Sin didn't always come back, but it always does. So sacrificing summoners is just sad. It doesn't make sense. It's unjust. It's not really the utilitarian option. Anyway, spoilers over. Back to the run. We head to Jose Temple, get our next Aeon, which I name Horse, and then we go to the show path. Yuna gets kidnapped by a robot, and it goes down pretty easily with a combination of haste and a lightning weapon. We also get Rikku, who is the only one who can make use of a ton of the items in this game. There was a part of me that considered that maybe I should be able to use special spheres and skill spheres to get other characters' initial skills. I did not end up using that rule. She also enables customization, which would have been very useful for this run, but that feels too much like you're using Rikku. After all, she's the one who does all the customization. If you've done this challenge or you've considered doing this challenge, what kind of rules would you use? Let me know in the comments. Next, we head to Guado Salam, and Seymour asks Yuna to marry him, which seems a little suspect because he's mine.
Mine.
But Yuna decides to take some time to think about that proposal, which makes sense because he's mine. But in any case, we head off to the Thunder Plains. And on the Thunder Plains, we get one of the most powerful shields in the entire game, the Yellow Shield, which makes us immune to lightning and makes grinding here a lot easier. And grind I do, because we have a bunch of awful boss fights coming up. The first is Spheramorph, who goes down to a bunch of overdrives. Funny enough though, this boss is actually easier with just one person because you only have to worry about healing one character. But then we get attacked by another robot near Makalania Temple, and it presents a unique challenge. This enemy launches Negator, which prevents all magic and summoning. And of course, Haste is classified as a white magic spell, which means we're now at parity in speed with this guy. But because of all of our grinding, we're able to withstand his attacks and take him down with a bunch of limit breaks. I mean, overdrives, whatever. But regardless of that nomenclature, another of my favorite channels, NGPlus, has an amazing video where he beats Final Fantasy IX with only trance. Yep, there's another name for a desperation attack. Why? Anyway, you should go check it out, and I will link it in the description-do, along with a bunch of other Final Fantasy X challenges that I love. We head to the Makalania Temple, where we fight our next boss battle against Seymour. Roses are red, Seymour is blue, he killed his daddy, and you'd still hit it too. So yeah, I die here. At this point, I just don't have the stats for this battle, so I grind some more in Makalania. Though eventually, I do make it to the second phase where Seymour summons Anima. But unfortunately, Anima's second attack is always pain, which causes instant death. If I had more characters, I could just revive whoever gets hit, but that is not how this battle is gonna go. I gotta hit it quick and kill it. But it's at this point that I discover the true final boss of Final Fantasy X, balls. Well, actually, just one ball. Specifically, the ball that gets thrown to Tidus when he uses Blitz Ace. Because I have to hit a Blitz Ace to kill Anima. I have to. There's no way around it. I don't have the damage without it. I literally missed this attack 5 times before I finished this fight with Seymour. And honestly, each time I got more and more frustrated. But finally, I managed to kill Anima. We receive our newest Aeon, whom I named Girl, and then we finish off the Makalania Temple. The Destruction Sphere item here is actually quite useful. It's a luck sphere. Now, we won't be able to activate that node until we get a Fortune Sphere, but hey, it's still going to be useful later. On the way out of Makalania, one of the eyeballs confuses me and I die. There is one way to avoid confusion deaths. Because I have a lightning-proof shield, if I equip a lightning strike weapon, then when I attack myself, I'll do 0 damage, but I wasn't thinking about that at the time. Because there's another boss to fight, the Ice Ogre Yeti thing. If I get berserked, it does a ton more damage, and it does, and I die. Basically, in this fight, you have to defend for every single one of his attacks. But I eventually get back there, I manage to kill the 2 Guado servants it has, and it goes down. Funny story, I missed the Blitz Ace, but I still get the overkill on him. Lucky me. We then head to Bikanel Island, and things get a little bit easier for a while. Well, kind of. The next big challenge is the Sandragoras. They kill you by confusing you and making you attack yourself. But as I mentioned before, equipping a lightning strike weapon and a lightning proof shield makes you basically invulnerable to them. So having overcome that challenge, we move on to home. I take a death to a Chimera and Guado soldier, but that's my fault. But we do need to talk about the plot a little bit here, because this is the big reveal, the moment where Tidus finally realizes that if Yuna casts the final summon, she will die. All this time he's been encouraging her to follow her path and become the next high summoner, not realizing what it actually means. And as a teenager, this scene had a huge impact on me. All this time, the Albed have been vilified as hating humanity, hating the Yevonites, just wanting them to die, whereas really they were just evaluating the trolley trolley problem in a different way. Why force people to die if getting rid of sin is temporary? And Tidus, not knowing what the final summoning actually means, runs his mouth and makes everyone feel pretty awkward, because they haven't had the heart to tell him that Yuna will die. But the reason they kept it from him, it's not that they didn't want him to know, they just couldn't handle that truth themselves. They couldn't handle talking about it. You can imagine that Lulu and Waka probably told Yuna, don't be a summoner. And Kamari too, though probably with fewer words. But guarding Yuna on her pilgrimage isn't just about sending her to her death, it's about respecting her autonomy. In the typical trolley problem, you have two groups of people who don't want to die, and their deaths serve no practical purpose. But Yuna would willingly sacrifice herself so that she can save everyone else, even if temporarily. Well, at this point in the story anyway. But Yuna's been kidnapped, and Tidus vows to apologize to her right after he saves her, which leads us to Bevelle. But not before we fight Evrae. And Evrae is a serious roadblock. The first problem is its Venom Breath, which casts poison status and does a ton of damage. The second is its speed, which can be mitigated a little bit in the early battle because it's vulnerable to slow, and I can haste myself as usual. However, once you get about halfway through the battle, Evrae will cast haste on itself, and that is a big issue, because even if you recast slow on it, it'll just cast haste again as a counterattack. But the final problem, the problem that I cannot overcome with my current power level, is Stone Gaze. It can basically petrify Tidus with 100% accuracy, and there's nothing I can do about it. If I get petrified, the run is done, and I go back to my last save. So I'll be honest, I was getting really frustrated here. I tried to fight Evrae about 20 times. Apparently, I'm a glutton for punishment. But then I realized that I really just have to grind, so I get some more HP, some more strength, some more agility, and we try again. And I'm still too weak, so I grind a little bit more, grab some more speed and strength, and we go back to this fight. I really thought at this point that I was not going to be able to complete this run because of Evrae. But eventually, I realize a winning strategy. Evrae casts haste when he goes below 11,000 HP, I think, so I get him to just above 11,000 HP, and then I use Spiral Cut. I think I actually got a critical hit here, which really helped. But because of that, after Evrae uses haste, I have some extra turns, and I'm able to kill him with just one more strike, which is a relief, because I've already spent about 40 hours on this run. Which reminds me, if you enjoy watching challenge runs like this, please hit that like button to show your support for the channel, and consider subscribing. And if you want real-time updates on my videos, join my Discord. There will be a link to that in the description-do. Now we fly to Bevelle, and it is really important that I don't die here. There's no save point before the next 5 battles, so if I die, I have to fight Evrae again. I'm not doing that. And I forgot to mention it earlier, but I also have an amazing weapon now called the Sonic Steel. I bought this from Owaka in Macalania, and it was crucial to making sure that I got extra turns and could flee from any standard battles that I thought would kill me. Fortunately, these 5 standard battles go well, and I make it to Bevelle Temple. And this temple is my least favorite, but at least at the end I get an HP sphere, which will come in very handy. But one thing that will not be very handy is our new Aeon, which I named Snake, because snakes don't have hands. And then we realize that the leadership of Yevon is all dead people. They don't care what happens to Yuna or the world, because if sin destroys everything, they'll still live on. Their only desire is to control everything in Spira. And because Yuna goes against the quote-unquote natural order of things, she is cast into the Via Infinito. Don't trust authority figures, folks. Your boss is not your friend. And at this point, we don't have Tidus for just a little bit, but fortunately, Yuna's summons are able to take care of just about every enemy in the Via Infinito. We are forced to fight Isaru's summons here, though. Against Ifrit, I summon Girl. She has Null Blaze, which can completely nullify Ifrit's limit break. Against Valifor, I summon Snake, who basically completely bodies him. And against his Bahamut, I summon Girl, who by shielding can basically completely deflect Bahamut's Mega Flare. Which leads us back to Tidus, Waka, and Rikku, who now have to fight the Evrae refight. Fortunately, this guy is undead, so a couple of Phoenix Downs take him out almost immediately. But this leads us to our next fight with Seymour Natus. This version double casts the level 2 elemental spells, cycling through each element, and its little helper dude does a little bit of damage. And the first phase isn't too bad. Since I have the lightning shield equipped, I don't take any damage when he casts Double Thundara, but in the second phase, Seymour casts Break, which petrifies me. Basically, my goal is to skip the second phase altogether so that he never casts Break. To do that, I bring Seymour into the second phase by casting Energy Rain, which also hits his little helper guy. And that helper guy drains Seymour's health when his health runs out. That brings Seymour into the third phase, where he only casts Flare and his little helper guy will only cure him. And I managed to finish off Seymour on my second try. But don't worry, he'll be back and it will be much worse. But before that, I get to watch one of the most iconic scenes in Final Fantasy X. Tidus and Yuna both question whether Yuna needs to do her pilgrimage in the first place, and they share a kiss. And in the dialogue in this scene, it seems like Yuna might actually give up her pilgrimage, especially now that the curtain has been pulled back. She sees that Yevon is just made of men. Well, dead men, but men nonetheless. But as much as she wants to give up her pilgrimage, she can't. Yuna as a character is selfless. However, cracks in the plan have definitely begun to form. Yuna asks Tidus to stay with her until the end, and he says no, he'll stay with her always. Clearly, he does not plan to let Yuna die, even if she has accepted that fate. And speaking of summoners dying, we next head to the Calm Lands. And I actually miss an important item here, the magic counter shield. I should have purchased it from this merchant on the hovercraft. I don't, and I will probably regret it. We learn that Maester Micah put a hit out on us, we do some chocobo racing, and we head on to fight the giant robot thing. This guy's pretty easy. If you cast Provoke, he'll only cast Blast Punch, which does half of your health and therefore can never kill you. I mean, I forget to do that the first time and he kills me, but the second time, that's the ticket. I do it and he goes down pretty quick. And next we head to Mount Gagazet, where Kimahri has a solo battle against two of his friends. Basically, if you cast Lancet over and over, he can't die, even with no sphere grid investment. But then we go up the hill and we have to fight Seymour Flux. If you've played Final Fantasy X, you remember this boss because he's one of the hardest in a casual run. In his first phase, he casts Lance of Atrophy followed by Full Life. Lance of Atrophy zombies and Full Life kills you. No bueno. But in his second phase, he casts Total Annihilation, which on Tidus will do about 4,000 damage. And I only have 3,200 HP, so that is a kill. So basically, I have to get that second phase down before it casts that spell. And the first time I try this battle, I don't even make it to the second phase. I just realized that I need to grind, but I kind of need a break from this game, so I take an interlude to do some more chocobo racing. This minigame is probably frustrating to anyone who has played Final Fantasy X. You gotta grab the balloons, not get hit by the stupid birds, and then get a score of 0.0. But wait, a score of 0.0 is not enough to get the Sun Crest. You actually need to get a score of negative 0.1. Then I just take a break from that, I run to Remium Temple, I get the Cloudy Mirror, which I don't turn into the Celestial Mirror yet, I'll do that later. But after that, I feel ready to grind. And now is the time that I grind until the end of Tidus's sphere grid, so he gets Quick Hit. Quick Hit is an amazing ability. It's basically a normal attack, but it takes a fraction of the time that your normal attacks take. And with this new ability, I'm eventually able to take out Seymour Flux. The strategy is actually the same as the prior fight. I use an Energy Rain to take out Seymour Flux and a Helper, and then the Helper drains extra HP from Seymour. I get him down to about 7,000 HP, but the final frontier is another Blitz Ace, this stupid final boss ball. But this time, I managed to hit it, and Seymour Flux is defeated. We're close to the end of the game, I can feel it. Now I have to fight the Sanctuary Keeper. And this guy is awful as well. He casts Photon Wings, which do a ton of status effects. The ones that I really care about, though, are Confusion and Sleep. But even worse than that, he casts Mana Breath. Unfortunately, Mana Breath has a chance to kill me. Not a certain death, but just a chance. Which means this is a heavy RNG fight. And that's not the only reason I need to rely on RNG. After every 5 times I hit it, it casts Tail Sweep, which dispels my haste and gives him more turns. However, this can be dodged. And after over 30 tries with this boss, I finally get the RNG that I need. He misses his final Tail Sweep and casts Regen instead of Curaga. Yeah, he heals himself too. He only has 40,000 HP, but he can heal himself for 20,000 about every 4 or 5 of his turns. And finally, I take him down. Thank God for Quick Hit. And now we're finally on to Zanarkand. I get my first Fortune Sphere sphere, so I use my first luck sphere and get 4 extra luck. This will help with critical hits and evasion. I also make sure to kill a Mandragora so that I can get Berserk Ward armor for the next battle. Because after we play some Tetris, I have to fight Spectral Keeper, who tries to cast Berserk on you every single turn. And if he does that, you basically lose the battle because you can no longer heal, and because you force him to counterattack just about every turn. But with Berserk Ward armor, he's not able to get Berserk on me even a single time, and we head on to Lady Yunalesca. But before we talk about the battle itself, I need to talk about this amazing cutscene, because this is the turning point of the plot. This is the point where Yuna finally says, I'm not going to give everyone false hope. If I can't defeat Sin for real, I'm not going to defeat Sin at all. We need to break the cycle. But authority figures like Lady Yunalesca tend to react poorly when you disrupt their status quo, and I think you'll be surprised at how this battle turned out. In a casual run, this battle is hard, but ultimately it's just a puzzle battle. Yunalesca doesn't do massive damage at any point in this fight. In the first phase, she casts Drain, which takes away just half of my HP. Always half, never more. And of course I don't plan for that, so I die the first time. Oops. And her physical attacks dispel the haste status. So basically casting haste on yourself is not helpful. And I get through this phase by equipping a counterattack weapon and just letting Yunalesca attack me rather than attacking her, because if you attack her, she inflicts the blind status. She's smart like that. But in her second phase, things get real because she casts Hellbiter on the party, or in this case, just on Tidus. And then she casts Regen on you, but if you're able to heal off that zombie status, that regen only helps you. But it's the transition from the second to the third phase that I think kills many players of this game. Yunalesca immediately casts Megadeath. Anyone who's not zombied will immediately die. So the strategy, kill her and then leave Tidus in zombie status so that misses. Then in the third phase, she has a pretty strict cycle. She casts Hellbiter for 3 turns, if you cure your zombie anyway, then casts Mind Blast, which confuses, but I have equipped Confuse Ward armor. Then she zombifies the party one more time and then casts Megadeath again. So basically, after that final zombie, you just leave Tidus zombified so that Megadeath can't hit him. And eventually, she goes down. Surprisingly, this is one of the easier battles in the run. And with Yunalesca's death, the final summoning dies with her. Summoners will no longer be sacrificed for the calm. I make sure to grab the Sun Crest before I leave Lady Yunalesca's domain, and we head back to the airship. And the next thing I do is get Tidus's ultimate weapon, the Salad Bowl. Unfortunately, the video file corrupted, so I can't show you my final time in the Chocobo race, but trust me, I was very happy that it was done. It took me about 20 tries. But the Salad Bowl does have some very useful features. First, it has the break damage limit ability, which will let me do more than 9999 damage. Second, the triple overdrive ability, which is extremely useful just to get some extra damage in on any boss. You know, if I can actually hit Blitz Ace correctly. Evade and counter should be self-explanatory, and magic counter is extremely important. You will see why in just a little bit. And there's a little bit more prep that I need to do for the end game. First, I collect all of the monsters in the underwater part of Mount Gagazet. That gets me 30 Mega Elixirs, which will come in very handy. I also head back to Kilika and fight King Ochu now. I can easily overkill him, and with a little bit of save scumming, I eventually get 2 HP spheres, which go straight into my grid. Then I go to the Cave of the Lost Faith. There, I grab 1 more Fortune Sphere so that I can use my other Luck Sphere. And then I head in to fight Sin. The battle with the fins and the core really isn't a big deal, but the battle with Overdrive Sin requires a lot of damage. Basically, your job is to kill it before its overdrive gauge kills up, otherwise it destroys your ship and it's a game over. It starts as a distant enemy, so there's nothing Tidus can do, so I cast haste on myself and cheer. Unfortunately, I have some misclicks and I switched to the wrong weapon a couple of times, meaning I get less overdrive. And so the first time I actually end up getting killed. And the second time too. But the third time I time it right and I think I get a couple of critical hits and Overdrive Sin is done. Thank God for those luck spheres. And for the next boss, which is another Seymour form, I have to do a little bit more grinding. Chimera Geist, who is probably the easiest enemy in the arena, drops Elemental Eater shields. And I need a Fire Eater shield. Now I will say I counted any time that I died on Chimera Geist as a death. I don't know if I should have done that since you don't really die in the arena anyway. Let me know in the comments. I don't know what I should have done here. But eventually I get my Fire Eater shield and we head into Sin to fight Seymour. As usual, I start by casting Haste and Shearing, and then when I'm fully boosted, I equip the Salad Bowl. Seymour starts the first phase by only casting Thyraga. So the Salad Bowl, because it has a magic counter, allows me to counter 4 times every time Seymour attacks, in fact, because he casts Thyraga 4 times. And because I have the Fire Eater armor, I'm absorbing those Thyragas, and so my Salad Bowl does maximum damage. And 8 total counters is enough to bring us into the second phase, where he charges up and casts Ultima. However, because of those extra HP spheres, I survive Ultima very easily, and Seymour goes down on the very first try. What an amazing change. And now all that's left is Braska's final Aeon. That's right, if we can defeat Jecht, then maybe we can also defeat Tidus's daddy issues. There's a small problem though, and that problem is Jecht Beam. It casts the Petrify status, so the first time through, I don't even make it to phase 2. I'm gonna need Stoneproof armor to make it through this, and there's only one monster that I know of that drops it, Demonolith. So I head to the Omega Ruins, and instead of just fighting them there, I actually capture one. Because if I capture one, then I can just fight it in the arena, because the encounter rate for Demonoliths is super low in the Omega Ruins. And I fight Demonolith probably about 15 times before I get soft armor for Tidus, which means that now we're ready to fight Braska's final Aeon, and we actually have a chance of winning. And if you've made it this far in the video, please do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to the channel, join my Discord. All of these things are completely free ways to support the channel. I want to make more and more challenge content for you guys, but gameplay for this video alone took about 80 hours, so you can imagine how long it took to sift through that for this edit. Anyway, thank you. I really appreciate everyone who supports this channel. When I played this game the first time, by the time I got to Braska's final Aeon, I was so overpowered that it was no issue. Braska's final Aeon has 3 phases. In all of those phases, though, the monoliths to the sides of him increase his overdrive gauge and heal him. However, they are susceptible to slow, so I haste myself, I try to get slow onto those monoliths, although they seem to have a lot of slow resistance, and I cheer 5 times as usual. Jecht's first phase has a few attacks. The first and easiest is Jecht Beam, which does Petrify, which I'm immune to, and does a tiny bit of damage, and also can be countered. The second is a Hand Blast attack. This attack does about 1500 damage, but more importantly, delays my next attack. And the third is his Overdrive, which does about 2000 damage, and more importantly, zombifies me, forcing me to take a turn to de-zombie and to heal. However, Tidus has a little bit of a secret in his back pocket. He can use the Talk command in his battle, which will lower Jecht's overdrive gauge and prevent his next turn. However, he can only do that twice in this battle. And so the first time in this battle, I used Talk twice, but I actually forgot that you can only use it twice, so I use it a third time, and then I get hit by Jecht's overdrive. And I also forgot that it causes the zombie status, so I get zombified, I use a Mega Potion on myself, which takes me down to critical health because you can't heal yourself when you're zombied. And then one of Jecht's attacks takes me out. How embarrassing. The next time I go through this battle, though, I remember that I could only talk twice, and I remember to use a Holy Water after his overdrive. In the second phase, he gets a sword, and he now has 2 attacks that delay you instead of 1. The Sword Swipe and that Hand Blast thing. But he can also still use Jecht Beam, and his overdrive, unfortunately, is doubled in power. So this phase is actually going pretty well, but this time I run out of Mega Elixirs before I can finish him off. On my third try, though, I actually make it to his third phase, where he stops using the Hand Blast attack altogether and only uses the Sword Attack and Jecht Beam. But I realize that there are times when I can actually use High Potions to heal instead of using Mega Potions and Mega Elixirs. So with some careful rationing, I'm able to make it through the third phase, and Braska's final Aeon is dead. All that's left now is to kill Yu Yevon and end the cycle of the final summoning. Well, okay, the final summoning's already done. And the cycle of sin. First, we have to destroy all of Yuna's Aeons so that Yu Yevon can no longer possess them. And this actually takes a while because apparently they're very evasive, particularly Dog. But once we're through all of them, we fight Yu Yevon, and I happen to have a zombie touch weapon, which I equip to zombify him, and 2 Phoenix Downs take him out. We have completed Final Fantasy X with only Tidus. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.